Well, I just want to take a little survey. I think it was about 3 years ago I did an article for The Loop, and it was all about the circle. How many have read that? Okay, a few. Then I'm going to just start there. And it may be repetitious for some of you who have read that, but I think it's important to give you some of the thoughts I have when I first came here to camp. That was 72 years ago, and 1946. I had just joined the troop at age 12. That was the joining age at that point. And it was May. And of course, in June, we came here to camp. So it was one of the biggest experiences that I had in scouting to begin with. Now, I was a tall, skinny kid in those days, and if I stood sideways and stuck out my tongue, I would look like a zipper. Anyway, so I came here to Carson, and I was met down at the White House. That's where you checked in those days. And my assistant stockade leader took me back to Carson, and we were indoctrinated with the song of Carson. Each stockade had a song, and you had to have that learned by dinner time and the cheer that went with it. But anyway, about Tuesday or Wednesday, I had some free time, and I started wandering about camp. And I started down over the hill, and I guess I was following at that point a deer trail. Anyway, I was hopelessly lost in the Greenbrier. At that time, it was probably up close to the top of my head, and I tried in vain to try to find my way back. So I just stopped, and I listened, and I heard some chopping in the distance. And so I followed that as best I could, and I wound up at the totem pole circle. There, a scout was probably a staff member preparing the fire, chopping wood, and I just casually sat down there and waited until he went back to camp. And I followed him, and then I knew where it was. But that, very clever. Anyway, that Saturday night, we all lined up on, this wasn't a road in those days, it was just a path. The only vehicle that ever came down that path was George Cole's red trailer and his Jeep. And that was the only mode of transportation or even carrying things. If we wanted to move platforms and that sort of thing, we did it all by hand. But anyway, we only had the 5 stockades, and we lined up here in stockade order, Taylor down there, and Sherwood up here, and Boonesboro, Carson, Crockett in between. Then we would file in exactly as we did this evening. You'll see that. They'll all line up and go in through Sherwood Forest, and take the back trail, same trail, into what is now the Trailblazer. And the remains of some of the things that we used to have in that circle can still be found there. The 2 outer fires on the lower side. The totem pole is long gone. The one that was there then rotted completely away and was redone, and the top part of it is in the dining hall. So that is part of the old tradition. The Skull Gate was there, and any scout that had been in camp before, as it is today, you can go in through the Skull Gate and sit on the inner circle, following the old tradition. Those who have been in council before sit closest to the chief. Well, the first year campers all have to go to the outside of that and take the outer rows. In the picture I saw over here this afternoon of that circle, there seemed to be only 1 or 2 rows of seats, and they were just at the perfect height that you see, the benches that you're sitting on. But as the time went by, we had to add more seats and more seats. And so that the outer ones could see, they were a little bit higher, and then a little bit higher, and a little bit higher. And then we were, up to about here. And of course, the first year campers were on the outer row, so it wasn't a big deal. There was a row of steps or bars there they could hop up on. But they were indeed quite far up in the air. So it was sometime, and I don't exactly remember when it all happened, we came up with the idea it was time to build a new circle. And we had gone through the experience before of building circles over here in, I guess it was sometime, well, the one we built over across the river was for the '69 conclave held here. So it was some years before that we did start the circle over here, later to become Antietam Circle. The same thing happened there. We got in a dozer and designed the circle so that it would be shaped like a bowl. One of the things that I wanted to add to that feature was that midpoint on the downhill side, I have a pipe there and have it come over so that, and it would be covered by some stonework so that Indians could pop up in the circle. But that didn't seem to be a good idea. It would probably be ending up as a snake pit, so we did away with that idea. Instead, we had a number of paths that could come down into the circle, so some of the pageant personnel could be funneled around the backside and then can completely appear by running down into the circle. The fire lighter has always been done by a very special thing. They have a rock and some flint and also some tinder. But I can remember one time we had a very poor flint and steel maker, and after a number of times of hitting the rock and then trying some matches, and finally Ken Yeager, some of you remember him, he was the scoutmaster of Malvern 7, stepped forward with his cigarette lighter and lit the so anyway, that brought a bit of applause for that little number. Anyway, I'd like to continue on, and some things that happened that involved the circle. Back, I think it was in 1950, I was then on the handicraft staff, and the camp director at the time was Sid Bell. He had just joined us in the council, and he brought a number of things to the camp at that time. We were using the old camp road, and it needed a special sign down there, and so he was the first one to come up with a big log that he carved, the words in there, the scout law is the law of this camp. And he brought that. In addition to that, and I forgot to look today to see if there were any of the plaques that he painted, but they were 8.5 by 11 size on Bakelite, and they had all the emblems for the merit badges were eagle, and they were placed around the dining hall. He also brought the idea of the horseshoe belt, and the leather belts that were sold there had to be cut out of the hide, and he also brought the silver buckle, and that has been a tradition here in camp since that time. Some people say, you know, the staff can only wear a silver buckle if they earned it as a Boy Scout, but since then, I think the camp now chooses one scout on their staff that can receive the silver buckle. But it is a high honor, and it's something that numerous people have achieved. And maybe those who have earned the silver buckle, would you raise your hand? Let's see if we have, look at that. Quite an honor. Well, to close, you know, I could stand here and give you stories about camp, and I'd like to close with one about the closing of our camp over there. We bring up all the first-year campers, and we honor them by giving them an emblem, and we give them a shake of the hand. And I'm going along one night, and I was handing those out, and I came to a scout who was kind of reluctant to shake the hand. And I said, you know, Scout, we use the scout handshake, and he finally put forth his hand, and I gripped it. And he looked up at me and said, I have poison ivy. So with that, I will close. Have a good day.